Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Impression Club Live. We are going to get Finlay Sutton back on to talk through chrome dentures to design live, so that should be great. And you were worried. What are you worried about?
I'm here.
Finn was worried he'd forgotten how to do it after last time. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you, Rupert. Yeah, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Thursday is quite a nice day to do these, actually, because it's my non-clinical day. So I've got the whole day to get ready rather than rushing back from Reading to be here.
Fantastic.
So as I was just saying in the intro there, we're going to talk through some Chrome designs today. I think the plan will sort of go through your mindset of how you approach it. And then we've got a couple of sort of cases that have been submitted in that you haven't seen yet, and we're going to see if we can stump you with them. Although one of them looks like the technician's had a little doodle of the potential design, so you can see what the technician has thought of that one.
That's fine.
And we'll go from there. But in case anyone hasn't seen the other live, Essential Potential saying good evening, everyone. Thank you. They know my catchphrase for the start. Could we get a little intro from yourself again, and then we can jump straight on in.
Okay, well, I'm Finlay Sutton. I just predominantly do dentures. That is my day-to-day clinical work. I love them. I love doing them. So, complete dentures, partial dentures, implant-supported overdentures. So all sorts. And I think it's a lost art. I think it's something that people aren't really particularly confident, particularly designing metal-based dentures. So hopefully we're going to really delve into this and find out a little bit more about how I actually do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, almost similar to the immediates one, this is probably one of my areas that I'm least comfortable with as well. I think probably from a young dentist point of view, you maybe don't do as many chromes as you used to, because of entering into NHS system perhaps, and obviously the financial constraints involved with there. So I think maybe it's something you do a lot of at university, and you do all your setups and things, and you learn it quite well there. But then you go into practice, and it's acrylic, and that sort of just fades away a little bit. So, but yeah, hopefully we can shed some light on it there. So, I mean, if we look at your sort of basic principles, then what's the sort of first thing you look at when a case comes in for a chrome denture?
Okay, so I think chrome's metal-based dentures. That's what I like to call it rather than chromes, really. So dentures with metal bases, they're like a definitive option for replacing missing teeth. These are my thoughts. Whereas plastic dentures, acrylic dentures, they are really temporaries. And I find that when if you imagine you fit say we're fitting in a plastic denture, an acrylic denture, and it fits beautifully, it's really nice and comfortable. It's really, if the patient can chew on these things, then often there's parts of the denture that are quite thin, so they do tend to break and crack. And so I regard those as our first stage, our temporaries, our immediates really, and then moving on to the metal-based ones, which are much more robust and also importantly much healthier for the gingiva, for the teeth and the mouth. And I use this Scandinavian approach, which is really, it's all about keeping the gingival margin clear. And what I try to sort of teach is, I want you to, if you visualize a resin bonded bridge, a Maryland bridge, and how the Maryland has got a wing that sits on the tooth next to the pontic. Well, Scandinavian dentures are very similar, but they are like multiple wings on the missing teeth, and it's rather like a removable resin bonded bridge. So that's the first thing, just to think about. So if I have a patient who comes in who's needing one of these things, this is what I do to start off with. It's back to the camera, taking photos, really good pictures of the patients. And actually what I'm doing is, when I'm looking through the viewfinder, I'm actually diagnosing the patient straight away. It's really cool because I can see all of these different landmarks in the mouth. I can see the teeth, I can see what's going on, I can see the tuberosities, I can look at flange depths, or, you know, sulcus depths, and tori. All of these sorts of things sort of almost trigger in my mind straight away when I'm looking through the viewfinder and taking the pictures. And actually, I find it almost easier to look in the mouth through the camera than actually physically looking with my eyes. It almost separates me from the patient. I can just get a really good picture of that mouth. But the photos are the key, because they go onto my laptop, and then from that, I can then design the partial denture. I can come up with a really good start, and I will refine that design later on, further on down the treatment process. Usually after I've done my primary impressions, we might refine it, but sometimes I will refine it once I've done a jaw edge or something like that. But I do think the basis of the design is from the first photos, and it's quite simple. I do have, if you go on my website and have a look at my resources section, on there is a guide, a sequence for designing metal-based partial dentures, and all that does is it stops me from forgetting what I need to be doing. So, in other words, what teeth am I going to replace? I'm just looking at it now on my laptop here. The flange design, the outline of the flange. Where are we going to have pink? Are we going to have pink there, or are we just going to have a tooth going into the gum? You know, what teeth are we going to use to support the denture with? Where are we going to put the rests? Which teeth have dubious prognosis? Which is dead important. You know, so many dentists say to me, well, you can't add to chromes. Once it's done, it's done. And that is not right at all. With the Scandinavian approach, if we've got a backing, you know, like a Maryland wing on, we can add to it, should that tooth be lost in the future. Because I don't have a crystal ball. I really do wish I had, but I don't. So I can take into account all of these potential additions. So
it was something actually I was speaking to a periodontist about the other week at a CPD event, the sort of Scandinavian, she'd not heard of it. And that was one of the things, the ease of being able to add into it is, and you can do it with other designs if you're thinking ahead, but it's one of the big pluses of the Scandinavian design.
Absolutely, it is. So, and that's great. And then we've also, and then I've not even talked about retention, have I yet? You know, so, and the basic principle, and this is, I think, dead important, is 2 clasps per denture, and no more are needed. And they work really beautifully. And thinking about the clasps in an upper jaw, if I'm restoring an upper jaw, I want to have the clasps as far back as possible, out of sight, if possible on the 6s. But I know often people have missing 6s, so we just bring it forward. And I'm using gold quite a lot and tucking it in and behind the back of teeth, or round the side, so they're not quite as visible. So that's for the upper. And the clasping in the lower, though, is a bit different. I don't try and take it right the way back. I try and put it in the middle of the lower denture. So clasping the 4s or the 5s, I tend to find that produces the nicest grip. And it stops it from tipping. You know, you're gripping it in the middle of the denture. So that's great. And then, you know, in terms of like a connector, we've got to connect everything up like a major connector. So in the upper, quite simply, I want to use the palette. The hard palette is fantastic for support. So I've just gone away from toilet seat designs. Don't think they're needed. And I don't find the patients really benefit from them, particularly if we've got the palette doesn't resorb, it's going to stay there forever. So let's use it and put the plate on that, a nice thin plate onto the palate for support in the upper. And in the lower jaw, a nice lingual bar, chunky lingual bar. If you're feeling brave, sublingual bars do work, but I don't that is very technique sensitive. The lingual bar is great. So it's lingual bar and then dental bars as needed. So, but everything will come, it'll just make sense when we get stuck into these cases, Rupert.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Perfect. So you've said there about your clasps, or 2 clasps. So what's the thought process behind that? And, is it the fact that 3, 4 doesn't do anything extra for the additional complexities, or what is it?
It's actually we don't need any more, and any more can just make them too grippy,
Mm-hmm.
because we've got so many of so much of the teeth in contact with the metalwork on the lingual or the palatal sides. So we've got loads and loads of contacts, and it's almost the denture is so beautifully fitting in terms of the way it inserts into the mouth. It just sits there, and it's got superb support, superb stability. The retention part is like the icing on the cake, really, for it, just to make it grip.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, so I really find that I don't need more than 2 clasps, and sometimes, in some circumstances, just 1 clasp is absolutely adequate. Particularly, say if the anterior, if we've got a really big freehand saddle and we've got we have to maybe clasp a 2 or a 1 at the front there, and that may be, aesthetically not fantastic. So we can use that as a path of insertion to get into the side of that tooth, and then clasp another tooth just on the other side instead. So sometimes just 1 clasp is absolutely adequate. But and I think that as a rule is great actually to apply. It's unnecessary loads of clasps.
And this is with Scandinavian designs, you say, because you're getting that additional retention, sort of almost retention form, or loads of different guide planes being used essentially with that big coverage. So if you're not doing that sort of Scandinavian style, are you as comfortable doing so few clasps, or do you just generally do Scandinavian now for everything?
I do Scandinavian for everything, and I changed from doing my sort of standard British teachings. I changed around about 10 years ago, and I found that moving to the Scandinavian approach, I got there's less numbers of reviews for the patient. So on average, I used to have 4 reviews per patient with the British style, or the American style, McCracken's, you could say, which is like that sort of standard American textbook that we use in the British schools quite a lot. So with that old system, it was like 4 reviews per patient, and they were never. I was never truly happy. And I think when you go into practice and patients are paying a lot of money for this sorts of treatment, that is the ultimate test bed of our work. If the patient's unhappy, they'll come back and tell us, and I can't say to them, "I'm sorry, I've done everything that I can." It's so I was never totally happy with that old British design system. And then when I moved to the Scandinavian approach, which was from via John Besford and also Charlotte Stilwell, those 2 people were the big influences for me, and it really changed the way I did things and improved the outcomes for my patients massively. So there's absolutely no way I'd go back. And I truly feel, Rupert, that the Scandinavian approach should be taught in every dental school in Britain. We should really change, because it's so much better, and it's not any more technical particularly.
Mm-hmm. Paul Imperius there saying, please can you explain the Scandinavian technique for us from North America? And that was the next sort of topic that we'll go into, so it seems like a good time. Dental architect there saying about the Women's Implantology Network, with Charlotte Stilwell being mentioned as well. So let's go into the Scandinavian design then, and for, as we say, those maybe Americans or the Brits that haven't seen it that much, what are the sort of basic principles you said about this sort of difference from classical colleting and more these sort of freeing up the gingival margins?
That's right. So the Scandinavian approach is very much to do with the the periodontium is the key. We've got to keep this super healthy. So any componentry that crosses the gingival margin will cause inflammation, and they have 50 years worth of research showing that, for instance, a plate, a dental plate which would run up the back of the teeth and around the back, will cause significantly more periodontal inflammation and caries than keeping it free and open. So, and that is basically it. Essentially, any components we want to keep 3 millimeters away from the gingival margin. It's called the 3 millimeter rule. The paper's written by there's a really good paper by Bengt Erval, and you can actually download that from our website, and it describes the Scandinavian approach beautifully. If you just go into my resources section, his paper's in there. So it's Bengt Erval. He was actually Charlotte Stilwell's teacher in Copenhagen. So, and then she brought it to the London hospital, and then it's picked up by John Besford. So I know, actually, Rupert, you did mention about wanting to look at a case that I'd recently put out, which was the Obturator case.
A wonderful case from your newsletter.
Yeah, that actually just shows the sort of Scandinavian approach quite nicely. But also, if you imagine that a patient can use a T-piece with the denture in place, so they can actually get their T-piece through between all of the teeth, and there's no blockages there. So that's another thing that we, need to sort of think about. Would you like me to show that, just to put it on the screen?
If you can. I was just looking at my screen to see if I could put it on as well. But no, if you've got it to hand, that would be great. I think visually it'll help people, won't it?
Fine. I'm just going to move my. So if I just shift here, and I'm going to just bring. So this is James, who's a young lad. He's 30, and he was unfortunately had this defect. Can you see here with does that show quite nicely there, Rupert?
Yes.
Am I a bit too far away?
Yeah, your screen's a little bit on the fuzzy side, but I don't know if that's the connection or.
I think it's the connection. So,
but guys that are watching, is my screen looking clearer? Because I can try and find the newsletter. I should be able to pull that up quite quickly. Bear with us, people. Unexpected turn.
Don't worry.
When did you send it?
Is that not looking clear at all there?
Apparently it's looking okay. People are quite happy, so let's go for it.
Cool. So I'm just going to point with my finger. So this chap had a defect up here. So he'd had a odontogenic myxoma removed, and but this is the actual framework of the crown. But if you can see here, all of that, the gingival margins here are free and open. So I'll just I'll just move that so you can actually see this in principle from different angles. There we go. So if I just do that, so that just shows.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah.
There, so you can see the teeth underneath this here. So the gingival margin is completely free all the way around, and you could actually get TPs all the way in between here. So it's keeping it as free as possible. But also, interestingly, we've got lots of tooth support on here for this chap. There, but in principle, that is it's just keeping everything away from the gingival margin. I'm just going to bring up another thing about it so I can actually show you the Scandinavian approach. Just one sec. There we are. So, so this is the Scandinavian approach with lots of backings on the teeth, loads of tooth support, and then this is our RPI system, with the mesial rest and eye bar. And in these cases, when the patient bites down there, the whole thing tips into that area and can be quite sore. Whereas with this, we've got so much more rigidity here. So that is that bit. But also, I want to show you what they look like on the inside. So here, and this actually has the paper on. This is Bengt Erval's paper. But if you see, we've got lovely space here. This is the key to the health of the teeth there. And you could imagine that a patient could get a TP from the inside through all of these areas there, and keeping them beautifully clean. And it's, you know, this is the we want to keep everything 3 millimeters away from the gingival margin with these sorts of things. So that's essentially it, really, in a nutshell.
And how long a span of the anteriors can you go for? Do you need to be putting sort of rigidity in there as well if it's a longer sort of span of the bars, as if it's going sort of 4 to 4 or something like that, or 3 to 3?
Not necessarily. I'll just bring up a little guide as well from my website, which has, I did a blog on this. So yeah, there it is. So we've got,
you posted this a while ago as well, and that's when we started talking about doing this session as well, I think, after you posted this.
So for instance, if you look at that design here, so we've got these missing teeth here, freehand saddle there and there, then we've got all of these backings around the front there. We don't necessarily need to do that. We don't have to have those backings on them if these teeth are going to be lasting a long time, which is, but if we've got potential for losing a tooth in the future, and this is one of the key things, we can add to the denture, if we lose multiple teeth here. But doing this is absolutely fine. It really isn't a problem, and it works really well as long as the technician makes it. There.
That's right, we got you. Perfect. Mike reckons he likes a brace at about 4 teeth on the lower, uppers are stronger. And well, so particularly that case that you've shown there with that front bracing, you'll see a lot of dentures where, particularly maybe upper bounded saddles, where you just have a strip across the palate. I think I've lost it completely. Have we got you?
Am I here?
I've got you, yeah. Can you hear us all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
So you'll see sort of bounded uppers where you've maybe missing 4s and 5s or something, and you'll just have a strip across the palate as your sort of major connector. Would you still go all the way around
there? Yeah, I would do. There's still, I'm just trying to picture it. Are you thinking about a design that's a bit like, if I just make this larger, like there.
But minusing the anteriors, because you see a lot of dentures like that, but you'd still prefer that bracing over the front.
Around the front there. Only, so if these anterior teeth here are poor prognosis, then doing the backings is really essential because we can add to it. But if they're in great condition, don't need to. So I would just have it resting on that canine and that canine, and not on these anterior teeth here. So just have like 2 sections either side.
And in the Obturator case, you've used it as an occlusal splint as well, essentially, and that can be something else that can be done with this sort of Scandinavian design.
That's absolutely, yeah, definitely. So I've actually given the patient a new bite with this. So if we see that there, so this is actually, the patient occludes onto this really polished metal surface, and also has an occlusion on here too, along there. And luckily for him, he's still got this 8 present, so that's part of the denture too. So that's an overlay. So all of this is an occlusion. When we come to there. So he's biting onto this metal bit along here, if you see, nice and evenly, and along there. And actually, people, because he's only 30, but he's lost quite a bit of tooth substance there. So this was partly why I wanted to do the overlay in the chrome, because that's going to just reduce the level of wear he's going to experience on those teeth at the top there. And also it just helps to support it really well in the mouth like that. So we've got great support from there, those teeth, as well as the part of the palate here, because I'll just show you what the actual defect looks like.
Yeah, because that defect area is going to have a lot less support, so maximizing it elsewhere is going to be really important.
It is, and even in all denture principles, I'm trying to do, and this comes from Charlotte, her teachings, which is you want to think of it like a table. So there's a table leg there. We can't really use this area here, so this is not going to be supported. But we've got the palate, that's still hard. So let's use that as support, and then all of these teeth all the way back there. So it's as well supported as possible.
And in terms of if you're looking to do this, preparation of teeth, either additive or reductive.
So yeah, with the preparation of the teeth, what I did actually was I added composite. Once we got it on, had a look at it on the surveyor, I put a little blob of composite just on the outside of the tooth there on that mesio buccal portion. And also there's an 8 here. I put a mesio buccal bit of composite there so that the clasp will actually engage it. So just in about that area there, so that it will grip better. And it really worked so well. These sorts of things work beautifully. I didn't do additive in the upper in terms of rest seats because I didn't want to jack him open even more, because we're just going to get great support off the teeth. But I'll just show you the clasp design from the side and you'll get an idea of this. So the clasp comes round here. The composite holding it in place is above it, just there. So it's just going to grip it nicely. So, I think these sorts of things are really important to think about.
And that's as I say, you've cast up your primaries, you've surveyed the models and things like that, and then you're looking at doing these additive parts. I've seen a lot of, particularly for Scandinavian designs of lower anteriors, cingulum rests to divert through the long axis of the tooth.
Absolutely, they're super cool those. So if I just go to my little talk, I'll just move to here, and the composite rest seats are brilliant because they are just these little, so this is a lower anterior here, and the composite rests just accentuate the cingulums of the teeth here, and then the chrome fits, the metal base just fits over there onto those surfaces. So if you look at this is a cross section of a tooth. The composite just sits on it, and I do prefer them in the lower, particularly because we've got very thin enamel, and going into if we cut into that, it's just cutting into a nice tooth. So just adding to it's great because they're small teeth, but also they're not going to get in the way of the bite either, because generally we've got either a class 1 or a class 2 incisal relationship, so there's no biting going to occur in this area, so there is space to actually put the chrome over it like that. So that resists those backward and downward forces, so you get increased support and stability with these lovely little composite rests.
And what's the sort of angulation of those there? Is it sort of a smooth lip? Is it sort of triangular?
Yes, it is. It's triangular actually. So it's a good question. So these are like, that's on that canine. So I shaped them so they are like triangular shape on all of these teeth. So they're a bit like that.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at them from the side. And actually, if you look closely at some of the cases that I have on my case studies on the newsletters, if you look on the website, the case studies, the lowers, just have a look at the models of the teeth, because you'll be able to see them on the cast, on the working cast, the exact shape of those, which will be quite useful.
Yeah. And I can read everyone's mind watching. How often do these come off?
Very, very rarely.
Because I know you always get asked this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I do all the time. So, you know, these things are brilliant. They just don't come off. It's very rare. I've only had to put back, I think, 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's because all the chrome fits so beautifully around the teeth, and they're actually not just holding onto those, they're actually touching the rest of the teeth as well. So they're really quite robust, but they're dead easy to put back on because you've got a matrix in the chrome. The chrome acts like a matrix, the metal base there, and then you can just put the composite in there, etch the tooth again, seat it back in, and then light cure it through. So it's not an issue. But do you know what? I think we need to get designing.
Let's get designing. So we'll move on to these. I think this is going to work. Here we go. Let's give this a try. So I've got, how is that there? They're both quite similar, actually, the cases that we've got.
Okay.
So we've got some prepared down central incisors.
Okay.
It's a very fun bite for you.
I'm gonna just.
We have a smooth transition as we go across. Mike says they virtually never fail. Mike's a big advocate of this. I think Mike did a really good animation with Avni about this, didn't you, Mike? And yeah, always check out Finley's resources. I've read most of them cover to cover. Yeah, we're looking good on that. There we go. Very.
How's that looking?
So that's perfect there, yeah.
Okay, so have we got an occlusal picture, please?
We've got an upper. They didn't send me the lower occlusal, annoyingly. So we've got an upper, so we've got a bit of an imprint of what they've got already.
So now, Rupert, we've got which teeth are missing then on that? So
we're missing upper right 3,
so
upper right 2.
So that I'm just going to work this out because I'm doing it upside down here. So that is that the right hand side there?
That's the left for us.
That's the patient's left, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to mark it up like that. So right, okay. So you said that what are the incisors there, Rupert?
So they look like they've been prepared down for overdenture abutments.
Okay. So do you know what? I love these colouring pens, by the way. Love them. So this is a Pro marker. So I'm just going to colour in. Can you hear me okay? Because the mic's on the other side.
Yeah, no, absolutely fine.
Good. Lovely. And then we've got
upper right 1 and 2 and 3 are missing.
Good. So
the 8 is missing as well, if you fancy taking that off.
Yeah. So, and then it goes all the way round to 4, 5 as well missing, aren't they?
On the right, the 4, 5 is there. The 6 has a distal rest seat by the looks of it.
So the 4, 5 are there, and the 6 present, but the 8 isn't.
And the 7's present, but the 8 isn't. Yeah,
that's fine.
And then on the left, we're missing all the way around to the 6.
Okay.
We've got the 7, and there's no 8.
Fine. Okay, dokes. Here we go. So. That's fine. And then this is that missing as well?
6, 7's there. So that's fine, yeah. And then you've got 2 molars that side, 2 molars that side.
2 molars here. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. That's okay. So, and then I'm just getting my pencil. So we're going to have, so we've got a molar here. This is just in dots. If you want to, these sheets are fantastic. You can download them as well from my resources section, and they're just lovely, drawn by John Besford. Beautiful. So now let's have a look. So first, we're going to have the clasps as far back as possible. Obviously, I can't really survey them, but in general, I just like to have retention right at the back. So I'd be clasping that back one there. And have we got an 8 on the other side, Rupert? We do.
We don't have the right 8s. We've got
That's
2
fine.
molars on the left, 2 on the right.
That's okay. Yeah. Good. So that's fine. So now we've got overdenture abutments, haven't we, at the front there? So
the centrals, yeah.
So we've got to be super careful and indicate this, because we're going to have a root eminence there. So we want that to be a lovely thin flange. So that has to be super thin there. And with overdentures, I draw them in green. By the way, this is totally blind, isn't it? I've not seen this case before, have I, Rupert?
Completely blind. To be fair, this one got sent to me about 5 minutes before I called you, so I had to basically put it on. Yeah.
All right. So that's the flange there at the front there. I'm going to now what I don't like to do is have a really prominent mesial rest on here, because the line of sight it's so visible. And the patient, you can just see them shining. So I don't like having them a big mesial rest. This is going to come round here lingually, and then a nice positive distal rest, because they are hidden away nicely. And then swinging that round, lovely. And same for this 6 here. You said that it might have a rest seat incorporated in it already.
Yeah, looks to be there. We've got a little rest seat by the looks of it.
Like this, there. So and these are all connect up, and I'm going to call them in just in a minute. So this, again, we're going to have a nice, very discrete mesial rest, but a good positive distal rest coming round. Discrete mesial all the way around, good positive rest there. So now next, in fact, I'll just colour that in, because you'll be able to start to see this. And we'll have a clasp coming around here. So, and connecting up like that, there, and this will come around here, lovely, there, and then around there like that. So, and I put an X onto this like this and like that. So that indicates we've got retention. So that's just your normal circumferential clasp that comes around here. So now I want to keep anything away from the gingival margins of these natural teeth. So just my orientation, this is quite tricky actually, just doing it upside down.
It's a challenge for you.
It is. So that's going to be my main. This is my main support, but notice I'm swinging it in to keep all of the componentry away from these gingival margins here, like that. So this will be the acrylic work, and I'll just colour that in to start off with. Now this bit here is going to be, we can't have that just sitting there like that and have all of this being cast in metal, that full length there. So this section here, that needs to come round there and out there. So, and that's going to come across here like this and into this, like that. There, so that will be all part of the metalwork. And in fact, we can probably bring that closer up like that. There. So now I will just quickly rub that section out there and just emphasize the outline just here and here like that. So, and then I'm going to colour in the metalwork, and it'll just start to make sense now. So this arm here comes around the back and connects onto the top of this distal rest seat there, and then this is all resting beautifully on the pallet, using that pallet as support there.
We've just had a couple of questions about things being more distal. Is it purely aesthetic? So one, why the clasp most distal, and two, why the distal rest seat, not the mesial? Is it purely aesthetics, or
Purely
is there
aesthetics? Purely aesthetics, but it's really important to understand though that the denture is still supported mesially by the tooth here. There is a little ledge. I always cut a little ledge in there, but it's just thin. So it's not overly, it's not really dominant and big, because they just look awful. And there's just no need for them, you know, from a mechanical perspective. So, and then all of this, I like to just colour in, you know, the pink work there. I love doing this, you know, Rupert.
therapeutic?
It is. It's really good. And you know, when, you know, after I've seen a new patient, when I sit down and do this, I just really, it's just so relaxing. Particularly, I love using photos of natural teeth though. I don't particularly like the way that we've got here. We've just got the study model that it doesn't really show enough to me, you know, but it's fine. It's fine. If I had the model in front of me, it would be a little bit easier, but it's no biggie. But yeah, I just love doing this. And you get a good feel for the mouth and what's going on.
We just had a question here about rigidity, saying in something like this, would a palatal plate that's connected, you know, be more rigid, or are you concerned about the trade-off of the rigidity?
This is, no, not at all. This is really rigid, this design, when you've got it all connected up. And what you've got to visualize, and this is, you know, as dentists, we don't really understand how these things are made. But underneath here is meshwork that's all part of the frame, you know, that's supporting. I don't colour this in. I wouldn't normally draw this, but if you imagine that this is all meshwork connecting into this plate, this whole thing is absolutely bomb-proof. It's solid. It's not going to flex anywhere. So if I didn't have this connector coming across to the back there, then this just wouldn't work. It wouldn't be possible to cast it, and it wouldn't be of any use in terms of retention, particularly. So that bit's really important. But what's really important is notice that all of the gums, the gingival margins, are all free. And, you know, theoretically we can get TPs underneath everything still, all the way round. This bit here, though, what I'd be thinking in particular, this is the key aesthetic point for the denture there, is your, is this four, where it fits against that. So that dictates the path of insertion of the denture. We want it to fit into, right up against that tooth. So the whole denture will go in this angle to it. So so if we're looking at like these diagrams here, so that would be, it would be that side, wouldn't it, there? So this is, and this is why I like to colour these in two. So that's, I'm getting my orientation because I'm having to do this upside down. It's dead funny.
As long as it's a 4, we'll work it out.
It's dead good, actually. So So this would be where the flange goes to on that tooth. You know, this tooth here, the flange would be rather
right up, yeah.
tucking right up to close any gaps there. You want to close the gap. That's the path of insertion here, like
so
that.
your initial surveying, you're looking at that and saying, I want, in this case, that needs to tuck up into there. You set it into that position, and then you'll look at maybe altering other angles, guide planes if needs be, to allow that to happen.
Absolutely. This is our key portion, because when the patient smiles, that's going to be visible. So if we can, and also the other great thing about having this path of insertion here, it means that the dentures, it doesn't want to drop down when the patient's chewing. So this acts, you could call that indirect retention. We've still got our clasp on the back tooth, you know, coming round here and engaging that section there. So that's retention, true retention there. But this is, so it's almost like, we call it a rotational path of insertion for the denture. It's going to fit in at the front first, into that front section, then rotate down at the back, or up at the back, if you will. So,
perfect.
So I'd then be looking at the occlusion and things on this case as well. I'd need to decide whether or not I'm going to open the bite up on the denture itself and on all of these metal components. And looking at the numbers of teeth that are left and the sort of state of the mouth, I probably would, you know, jack them open a little bit on the denture, because there's good evidence to show that you can open the bite up comfortably without the patient having problems at all with that. So I'll probably open the bite. And secondly, this is going to be a key area here. This is the overdenture. The overdenture part. Sorry, I'll just lift that up. This is a pressure point there.
Yeah.
So we may have to extend the metalwork, the back, so we actually have metal backings over those there. So this would be something that we'd have to look at in terms of space. You know,
similar to sort of implant locator attachments and things like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I've literally, if you had an implant underneath here, locator, then this is going to get hammered. So we want it to be really strong, and we don't want the teeth to crack and break in those areas. So metal backings incorporated within all this structure would really work nicely. So it's got to be ultra thin, the flange here. Can't emphasize that, because we've still got the root eminence there. So if we put plastic on the outside of the root, it's just going to bulk the lip out and look really bad. And
you're not replacing any tissue. No tissue's been lost.
No, potentially they would be butt fit against the crowns, against almost like removable crowns. These two front ones, you know, that just sit into the teeth, just overlap the soft tissue ever so slightly to cover the gap. But that's a key aesthetic part of the denture there too, to think about.
Excellent. Well, I hope the chap who sent that through has seen that. If not, I'll let him know. Are you ready for the second one?
Yes, please.
Mike Gregory there saying as well, if you haven't got a surveyor, get one, guys. That's to add to the list for young dentists: loops, camera, and a surveyor.
Definitely. And you know what is really super important, I think, if you want to do high quality dentistry, is having an articulator that is the same articulator that the technician uses to, so that you can put your models on, mount your casts, you can look at the bite properly. So a surveyor and an articulator are good investments.
So this one, as I say, is the technicians had a little doodle already with an idea for a plan. So
Yeah.
you can see what you think of this one, but it looks to be they're looking to go down that Scandi route, so that could be an interesting one.
Is that,
You might
do you
this
want me
is the
to,
lowest. You might be able to have this the right way around. That might be a bit easier for you.
that looks good. Yeah. So this is, I'm going to draw on this bit here. That's the
So
low.
I
Yeah,
would
great.
say we're missing fives and sixes here, both sides, and we've got sevens and eights.
Okay. So this is quite, so we've got sevens and eights. We're missing fives and sixes.
Yeah.
Okie dokes. And they're quite big, relatively large saddles, aren't they? Because
Mm.
now with this, the I'd need to know. The other thing that's quite important to know is really what sort of state these lower incisors are in. You know, whether they've got a good prognosis or not. So this side looks like there's more missing teeth. Is that? Or is it just one molar there or two?
We've got two. We've got a
Yeah.
seven and an eight there. So I think it's just maybe
No,
the left side's been missing longer and leaning in.
fine. Okay, and then
Yeah, Mike's mantra for quality dental design: maximum support, minimal gingival coverage. Done it in 5 words.
yeah, that's right. Definitely, Mike. I totally agree. So 6'5", and this is that's it, isn't it? There. So okay. So let's do a. If we imagine that these lower end sizes are in good nick, and they're not going to be lost, then I'll draw it like that first, and then we can then add to it, can't we? So, so we've got two back teeth there, and that's fine. So we're gonna not. This is quite important, actually. Important point. I think clasping those back teeth, it's a bit of a problem in lowers. I tend to find if I do clasp the back, it sits down at the back, but never doesn't sometimes sit at the front properly. It almost tilts up. So this is why I like to clasp the premolars. So that's what I'm thinking there. Right, let's have a look. So we've got these two back teeth there. So I want to maximize our support. So, and come round here like that. Nice distal rest. And right round just there, the back. A nice distal rest there too. Do you know what? I don't think I've ever drawn a design like this for. I've not. Do you know what? I've not seen a case like this. Seriously, for donkeys. But anyway, let's go for it. We'll work it out as well. So that's the metal at the back in, and then at the front anteriorly. So I always think that premolars are a little bit dodge anyway in terms of their life expectancy. So I'll put a nice rest there, and then I would always bring it forward onto the canine like this. So I'll have a nice wing on that canine. Same on this, prominent distal rest, and then swing it round into the canine just like that. And on those, this is where additive rests. So that's an additive rest. Can you see I've done it like in a V shape there? So
Those
that would be,
composite triangles again that you showed earlier.
yeah, composite triangles, exactly. So now if these teeth were in good nick, I wouldn't bother covering them if they're going to last for the rest of the patient's life. If you think that they're going to be okay. And the important thing about these sorts of dentures are they do last a long time. So it's a denture like this is going to easily last, or should really, I'd say, last 10 years. So it's important to know what the prognosis is like. Potentially, if there's any doubt, just put a backing on. But anyway, we'll pretend they're fine just for now. So these are the saddles, and then we're going to have we need a lingual bar to connect these two together. So like that, and so bring that around. So nice lingual bar, and just a little. And I like to just do it. Pretend there's a lingual frenum here, so I just swing that in. Just looks nicer. And then round here like that. So we're keeping everything away. So let's quickly get that coloured in. Like that. These are like the, so that's the table. We've got one leg there, one leg here, there, and like this. And then colouring this sublingual bar right the way through. Nice. These are always, well, I said sublingual bar, didn't I then? So I do, but I seriously, they're flipping hard to do. So I really think the lingual bar is absolutely fine. It's just the sublingual bar, you can take it further away from the insides of these teeth than the lingual bar, but it's academic. Don't worry about it. I've just emphasized my composites and the the rest seats there. So I like, and when I have additive, I like to just put a few dots on. It just indicates that they are additive with composite. These are sort of little keys that I use for communicating with myself and with Rowan. So if you look at any of my patients that I treat in their notes, they'll all have stuff like this, these sorts of designs scanned in. So that's that. Now, what's missing? Retention. So I love gold clasps on these. If gold is too expensive, stainless steel works beautifully. 0.9mm stainless steel, but 0.9mm gold is beautiful on these areas here and here, and that's right in the middle of the denture there in terms of the grip. If I was going to clasp that back one, it just destabilizes. It doesn't quite, and because these in the upper, I like to have them as far back as possible for aesthetic reasons. It's dead important for aesthetic reasons. But in the lower, these can just be hidden away by the cheek. The lip covers them generally. So that's the design there done. Now, if these were dubious in prognosis, I would just bring that across there, and I would put composite on these two. If they're like natural teeth, but if they've got crowns on and they've got existing restorations, I would cut in just a little dimple on the inside, and then this just gets all connected together there. So that connects round, nice and rigid, works really well, and that's it.
Perfect. Alan, the Cornish dentist, they're saying, do you treatment plan the need for the lingual composite rest seats prior to the design stage so that you can quote it for the patient, or are you adding that in after the design?
Yeah, no. Generally, when I've seen the new patient, I will. I know that I'll need to use them, and then that just gets built into my treatment planning card. So, but actually, I don't really. I think that's a really good point, Alan. I'm glad you've raised about these rest seats and tooth prep. I do loads of preparation of teeth, so once they've been on the surveyor, I'll particularly like these lower teeth here, particularly the lower premolars, they often tilt in, and there's quite a, so they're actually lingually inclined, and so the metalwork would stick out. It would touch the top, but it would go down and actually stick out a little bit. So I'm often just shaving bits of teeth off, just ever so slightly, just to improve these guiding surfaces. So the preparation appointment is quite important. So, and I would go, and I would actually like to, on the study model, would be, and I'm just going to take another sheet here. So, say we've got the model of the mouth there, like you've got on the screen there. Before I actually come to treat the patient, I'll be putting on here, you know, it's like a prep guide. So we need to prep a little bit off here, do there, or make a rest seat. And so I know exactly what I need to do at that appointment. So it's just nice to have this prep guide to work round and make sure I don't miss anything.
Mm-hmm.
Super.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
I hope everyone's happy with their designs if they got theirs done. We had another question, and I thought we'd do it whilst we're talking about leaning in and lingual and tricky things for lowers, about mandibular tori. Tips for getting around that.
Okay, so I'm gonna, quite simply, the metalwork can just flow over the tori. So if I can just think of, I do have an example of one. Just one sec. It's not a massive issue at all, but it's important that the metalwork shouldn't touch the torus.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just quickly looking up one of my patients here. That's just one sec.
That's alrighty. And if there are any other questions, guys, please do pop them in so we can get a couple of last questions in while Finn's finding that. But I hope that was good and people enjoyed that, especially if your case got done. That would be handy. And definitely make sure you're signing up for Finley's newsletter because it's always just a fantastic resource. Here we go.
Hello, there's Buddha.
Keeping an eye on you.
Cool. So, just need to. I'm trying to find that case, aren't I? So.
Quite an interesting question there as well while you're searching. If the opposing jaw is edentulous, are you still doing the rests or are you going to correct it in the occlusion of the artificial teeth?
I just do a little bit of shaping, but much less if there's nothing opposing it. Just for rest seats, but I will often do the side parts of the teeth, particularly if we've got undercuts, say. So imagine that this is a lower premolar, and then that side backing, the side bit would come down there, so we'd have an overhang on it. So just prepping it just gently to straighten it up, so we got more metal to metal is really quite important, Rupert. So I'm just going to quickly find that partial denture one.
We've got a follow-up question for that second design. Type of gold clasp design recommended for those fours.
Okay. So this is. I'll just go to my website because it's easier. There, and if we go to the case studies, if you go down to the bottom there, this particular one's just got a lower denture. So the chrome, there we go. So if you can actually see that there. So this is it here. These work really nicely. Just coming round the side of the tooth there, just to grip it. Does that show up all right?
Yeah, looks okay.
Good. Fine. So
it's almost sort of crimping back down again, and before it tucks around the front.
So yeah, it just comes out the saddle here, and it's a bit like an L shape.
Mm-hmm.
Just wraps around the tooth, and then actually helps. This is a free end saddle, for instance, so this is going to help prevent distalization of that tooth. So yeah, no, in terms of the, I'm just trying to find that
Find those tori.
The tori, it's it just doesn't sit onto the gum. It just flows over the top of the gum. That's the main thing with those. Partials. There we go. And I can't actually find that case.
That can be our part 3 in 6 months' time. We'll finally find it. We'll get on the lingual tori.
Yeah.
But essentially, you're saying just riding just above, because obviously the tissue there as well is very, very thin generally over the tori too. That's
right, it is. So the tissue is always friable on that lingual surface. So the actual metal base anyway shouldn't touch that area. It shouldn't rest on the soft tissue. So if you imagine the lingual bar, this area here mustn't touch the tissue. So there's actually about we actually do 0.4 of a millimeter space underneath it, so it isn't actually resting onto the soft tissue itself. The edge bit here, though, the top edge, does fit flush onto the gum. So if this is the lingual surface there, that bar will just touch the soft tissues like that, but there'll be a gap underneath it. So because we don't want it to rest, we want to, but we don't want food just to get under it. So if that was a torus, this is a torus, there'd be the metalwork would flow over it, but it would just be a space like that, so it doesn't actually rest on it. And you can see it just in the shape of the lingual bits here, that it'll just have a little bump underneath it where it just sits over it.
And I imagine it's going to be a case again where you're going to want to maximize your hard tissue support and maximize support in general, so that you're not going to get any displacement downwards if you had a free end saddle in that area or things like that.
Absolutely. So that's why all of the support from either your free end saddle is maximized, the support from the teeth are maximized as well, just to prevent it from sinking down.
Yeah. And because there was a couple of questions sort of, or comments even just coming through about saying, do we need this much support? But you sort of touched on it earlier, the stability, support, retention sort of triangle. And particularly with chromes, we obsess about how retentive they are because of clasp. But actually, if you're maximizing that support, your almost need for the retention is less, because you've got that stability inherent from that support.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. So, and interestingly, that's a really good point by whoever's mentioned about the need for support. When I first started doing these, I thought that the patient acceptance would be not as good because of there's so much more coverage of the teeth. But actually, the mouth feel of them is better because the backings are quite thin and they really cover larger surfaces of the teeth, rather than having these little bits of metal that just stick out, small bits that are quite prominent to the tongue. So actually the patients do like them more. But what's really important, and really, really important, is the patient actually sees them. So they need to be able to pick up them and have a look at these types of things, because we don't want to spring it on them right at the end. So this is why, drawing that out, designing it, putting it in the letter, their treatment plan letter, plus some examples of previous cases as well, so they can actually see what they look like in that letter, but also physically in the surgery, they pick them up. This is what they're going to be like.
And this is where you do the pattern resin try-in as well a lot of the time, pre-committing to the framework?
Absolutely, yeah, that's very important. That's a really good point. So so before we actually make the metal work, we do a resin pattern. So it's made of Duralay or GC pattern resin, this red material that is the same shape as the metalwork. So we can try that in and assess it in terms of A, does it fit? B, does the patient accept it, in terms of that's where the metal's going to be. Where you can see the red bits, that's where the metalwork's going to be. So they can actually just have a good look at it. And also we can assess the bite and the occlusion on the whole thing too. So that's a really great, I think dentistry, to get it right, it's all about rehearsals. Rehearsing everything. It's like rehearsing impressions. We rehearse it with the patient before I actually do it. Dry run. Let's do a dry run first, so they know exactly what's coming. There's no surprises. It's exactly the same with, rehearsing the try-in, rehearsing the tooth positions, making sure the patient's totally happy before we proceed to the next bit.
Yeah, we've got one last question, because I know we've run over our target a little bit there. So, what if it doesn't fit? How do you check where the issue is, given there are so many points of contact with the framework? And you're going to get your occlude spray out, right?
Yeah, I could see you. You know yeah.
I've watched all of your lectures at least 3 times. I've seen it all.
So it's occlude is fantastic. It's a little powder spray, and I spray it onto all of the fitting surface of the denture where it fits against the teeth, and gently just try that in and make it. So this is at the chrome trying phase, and I'm trying that chrome in. So just gently pushing it down, and quite often they don't fit straight away. There's so many parts to touch. So take that out, and then I grind off where it's rubbed away from the inside of the denture. So it'll just rub against the tooth, and then it'll come out, and then I just use just a nice diamond crown prep burr. It's a chamfer burr, just to do that, just to adjust it and just seat it. But I do think I need to say this again, and when I'm adjusting it, I would never touch the edge bit where the collet part touches the tooth. I adjust anywhere underneath that, and very, very rarely would I go to this top bit, because if I do go to the top bit and adjust that, I can create a gap. But I can adjust underneath that with impunity, in terms of it creating a gap.
Same with the acrylic collets as well.
Precisely. Same with the acrylic collets. Yeah.
Perfect. Signature dentures there saying, but first blame the lab for it all going wrong. I think that's a perfect spot to finish it on. I had you on since I've started doing the top tip, and your top tip, which was on my New Year's little package that I did, was about getting a technician similar age, working together, growing together. So I'm going to make you rack your brains for a second top tip, and it can't be Mike's buy an articulator by a surveyor.
I think top tip is to just don't skim. Look, make it an enjoyable thing, colouring these things in. It's really good fun doing it, and just print one of these off and just start doing that, and just working through the whole design, and it'll start to make sense. It's really important to, you know, draw the design. You'll make mistakes. We all make mistakes to start off with, but you'll see them, and then you can accelerate your learning. And the partial dentures will improve massively with doing that. So, do proper designs, please.
And Mike says, form a study club on removable prosthodontics. That's what this is for right here. I know we get distracted with anterior composites on this sometimes, but absolutely. And Signature Dentures wants to join Mike's new study group. Perfect. Then thank you so much for coming back on. Thank you everyone for turning up and watching. Next week, we're not talking about dentures. We're talking about oral surgery for the GDP with oral surgery specialist Sammy Stagnall. So hopefully I'll see you all there. And then maybe I'll see you soon. I'm trying to get on that course in November.
Absolutely. That's brilliant, Rupert. Cheers. Thanks very much.
Cheers, guys. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.